Hey everyone, it's a Booktube channel here, and today I'm going to be talking about a very particular genre of Japanese literature. This genre, or as we'll see, supergenre of Japanese essay writing is something that I think all readers, and especially contemporary writers, should be engaging with. There's a long tradition of Western writers, either explicitly or subconsciously drawing from this tradition in Japan, what's known as Zuihitsu, which has its origins in classics like Sae Shonagon's Pillow Book. Before I begin, I just wanted to encourage everyone watching this video to subscribe to my channel. Unfortunately, only 6% of my viewers are actually subscribed, and if you were to do that, it would really help me out. Based off of the feedback from my 500 subscribers special, I am going to be focusing more on East Asian literary content, works of translation, Asian movies. It seems to be the reason why you guys are subscribed to me, so I'm hoping to make more content like that. And if you like the subject of this video, please let me know in the comments. It really helps me out. Okay, so before we begin this discussion about Zuihitsu, I wanted to ground it in the context of contemporary American fiction, because that's the main foundation from which I'm exploring this quite ancient genre of writing. I was inspired to make this video not only because I like reading Japanese literary classics, but also because I recently read this book written in 2010 called Reality Hunger, a Manifesto. David Shields argues that contemporary literature should increasingly embrace hybrid genres of writing, that is, blur the boundaries between fiction, nonfiction, and he also has some bits in there about liberating plagiarism from cultural stigma. And the way he does this in the book is by writing his arguments in a series of numbered passages in a collage, braided essay sort of style. And the idea that he wants to convey is that what is most important for modern literature is to try to represent the fragmentary nature of modern life, as well as our increasing hunger, or at least his increasing hunger, for more personal narratives in fiction and vice versa. And to an extent, I think his argument is sensible and honestly gives a good representation of current trends in creative nonfiction. It reflects the recent popularity of confessional memoir, autofiction, blogging websites like Medium, which I myself write on. And while I was reading Reality Hunger, the first book that popped into mind was actually Maggie Nelson's Bluets, as well as her book The Argonauts, which have both been lauded as genre bending. Both of these works play at the intersection of memoir, academic thought, while also having incredible popular appeal. My problem with David Shields' argument, and the reason why I wanted to make this video, is because while I agree that the kind of writing that he's pushing would be immensely relevant to our everyday lives, I question his premise that this move would be a radical one, that the transformation that he wants in literature towards reality is necessarily one that's tied to our present technological moment. Even Maggie Nelson acknowledges in an interview for The Argonauts that her book is just one strand in a long lineage of what she calls anti-genre literature. And while Shields is aware of this too, the predecessors that he notes in his book are people like St. Augustine, Rousseau, people in the Western tradition. And this really goes to show how limited his worldview is, really just tied to Western literature and the Western canon. And so while I think his desire for a radical turn towards reality is a well-intentioned one, and one that I think he pulls off quite well, I think it also points to how he is blinded to how this movement has already occurred in other cultures, primarily in Japanese literature, which I'm going to be discussing today. No matter what resource you read in order to learn about Zuihitsu, you're always going to come across a single name, which is Sae Shonagon. Just some information about Sae: she was a poet as well as a court lady of Japan's Heian period. In this book, she essentially invents the literary technique of using the series of numbered passages, some of them being a sentence long, some of them being multiple pages long. And in these passages, she explores everyday life among the nobility. She dips spontaneously into topics of poetry, love, clothing, and daydreaming. And one of the things about this book is that there's no real overarching message or plot. Under the list of worthless things, she writes, "I never intended this book to be seen by others, so I've written whatever came into my mind, without worrying about whether people would find it strange or unpleasant." And this is kind of the spirit that you see pushing a lot of Zuihitsu writing, which is this feeling of not really caring about impressing your reader, more so using your everyday life to just entertain, and it's a more lighthearted style of writing. Her list names are often quite hilarious, like things with terrifying names, or embarrassing things, awkward and pointless things, awkward and embarrassing things. And even a millennia later, her work continues to inspire imitations around the world. Some American examples that come to mind and that I really like are The Crying Book by Heather Crystal, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, Drifts by Kate Zambrino, and of course The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. Oftentimes what these writers are drawing on is the formlessness of this genre of essays, which we in the West oftentimes reduce to the pillow book, but really has a diverse ancestral tree in Japanese writing, and still many Japanese writers continue to write Zuihitsu to this day. For anyone who's interested in a more broad introduction to Zuihitsu, I highly recommend this book. It's called the Columbia Anthology of Japanese Essays, and to my knowledge, it is the only anthology in English which has this wide-ranging perspective on the genre as a tradition. As you can see here, the text has a very useful introduction, but also it starts with the pillow book, and then goes on to discuss many different types of Zuihitsu, oftentimes just giving short excerpts so you can just get a flavor of the author's writing style. There's a mix of all sorts of subgenres here. Everything is incorporated, from poetry to literary criticism, biography, confession, reportage, and even travelogue. Overall, I think that this anthology is an excellent start, but clearly is nothing more than a beginning for people who really want to learn about this tradition. I also want to talk about what is probably the second most well-known work of Zuihitsu, which is Yoshida no Kenko's Essays in Idleness. This book was deeply inspired by the pillow book, and as you'll see, it also has numbered sections, and it's probably most famous for its preface, which goes, "What strange folly to beguile the tedious hours like this all day before my inkstone, jotting down at random the idle thoughts that cross my mind." And this really gets at, again, the heart of Zuihitsu, which is this sort of calm, stream of consciousness approach to writing in which you don't really pressure yourself too much to be great or amazing, but you kind of just write down and track the movement of your thoughts like a river. And so you can see, just like the pillow book, Kenko assembles a pretty much random assortment of anecdotes, opinion pieces, memories, and even his own sets of lists. One theme that I've noticed with Zuihitsu from my own study of the genre is that it really values spontaneity and this sort of raw sincerity that, in my opinion, kind of presages the emergence of confessional or memoir writing that has occurred in modernity, in which a lot of people call for following postmodernity. But what I also notice is, again, this certain offhandedness, this casual approach to writing, one that doesn't have a serious commitment to fact, rather just writing down what sounds good. I think that people like Sai or Kenko would have been very comfortable in the internet world, where a lot of people are writers on the internet and they're able to write whatever comes to their mind, and those opinions have real weight on the world. Really, sitting down to read a work of Zuihitsu is kind of like sitting with a scholar and having a long chat with them. You're kind of just sitting there, drinking your coffee, listening to them gossip. It's very enjoyable, and in many ways, it kind of feels like reading Haruki Murakami's novels. It's kind of just like a deep massage for the brain without working it too hard. It's actually quite therapeutic, and this is actually one of the reasons why I think more people are writing this style of casual slice of life literature. So, in our dire cultural times of disasters, crises, and frankly unbearable irony, it's clear to me why the supergenre of Zuihitsu has such an immense influence on people like David Shields, Maggie Nelson, whether or not they're aware of it. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more bookish content, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.